How does an ordinary suburban couple transform into one of Chicago's most notorious bank-robbing duos? This question haunted law enforcement and fascinated the public as Jeffrey and Jill Erickson emerged as the infamous Bearded Bandit team in the early 1990s. Their story reads like a Hollywood script, but the reality was far more chilling. The story of Jeffrey and Jill Erickson, an unassuming suburban couple, defies the typical narrative of criminality. On the surface, they lived a quiet, ordinary life. Jeffrey worked as a security guard, and Jill was a lab technician. To their neighbors and colleagues, they seemed like the embodiment of the American dream, content with their roles and unremarkable existence. Yet beneath this facade of normalcy lay a calculated and dangerous criminal enterprise that would ultimately shatter their facade and rock the city of Chicago. Known as the Bearded Bandit duo, their meticulously planned heists netted over $750,000, and their criminal activities led them down a path of violence and tragedy. This chilling tale is not just one of greed and lawlessness, but a transformation that raises unsettling questions about the thin line between ordinary lives and criminal behavior. What drove them to risk everything for a life of crime? Was it desperation, a thirst for excitement, or something far more complicated? This is the story of how a seemingly normal couple embarked on a dark journey, forever changing the course of their lives and those around them. Jeffrey Erickson grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in the 1960s and 70s. His middle-class childhood was pretty normal by all accounts. His father was a manager at a telephone company, and his mother stayed at home with Jeff and his older brother Jim. Jeff was a sociable young man, a part of the swim team at Niles West High School. He was an average student, but was known for his excellent memory and encyclopedic knowledge of certain topics that interested him. After graduating in 1977, Jeff joined the Marine Corps, where he was awarded for his excellent marksmanship skills. He received an honorable discharge after 4 years of service. In 1981, 23-year-old Jeff walked into a bar in Niles, Illinois, and met Jill Cohen, a tall, blonde high school senior celebrating her 17th birthday. The pair were instantly taken with each other, bonding over their love of animals. The 6-year age gap and the fact that Jill was still in high school didn't seem to make a difference. Jeff nicknamed her Gorgeous, and from that day, the two were inseparable. But Jill's family wasn't as idyllic as Jeff's. Her parents were going through a bitter divorce, something that weighed heavily on Jill, who struggled with depression. 6 months into their relationship, Jill dropped out of school and moved in with Jeff, partly to escape the drama at home. To Jill, Jeff seemed like a lifeline. The couple were crazy about each other, and in July of 1983, they married in a civil ceremony. For the first few years of their marriage, Jeff worked as a truck driver, and Jill studied chemistry at Loyola University while working as a lab technician. They acquired a growing number of dogs and birds, much to the frustration of their landlords. The couple moved often to avoid being evicted or having to get rid of their beloved animals. In 1986, Jeff Erickson joined the Chicago Police Academy and later took a job with the Hoffman Estates Police Department in the Chicago suburbs. Despite his good interactions with the public and exceptional marksmanship, Jeff struggled with the basic police work. His inability to handle essential tasks and his lack of common sense led to his dismissal from the department. Police Chief Donald Cundiff would later criticize him for being inept, and Jeff himself admitted that he was too lenient on lawbreakers and disliked making arrests, feeling like he was ruining people's days. After losing his job in security in 1989, Jeff found himself financially struggling, compounded by his wife Jill's medical expenses for a chronic illness. The couple's desperation mounted, leading Jeff to turn to crime. Drawing on his law enforcement knowledge, he meticulously planned their first robbery. On January 9, 1990, Jeff executed his first heist at First National Bank in Wilmette, Illinois. Disguised with a fake beard, baseball cap, sunglasses, and carrying a police scanner and a gun, Jeff walked into the bank, told the tellers it was a holdup, and walked out with thousands of dollars in cash. This marked the beginning of a 22-month crime spree where Jeff would rob 8 banks in the Chicago area, stealing nearly $200,000, the equivalent of over $430,000 today. Jeff's trademark disguise, the fake beard, became a symbol of his transformation. It wasn't just a simple accessory, it was a carefully crafted piece of theatrical makeup. Jeff applied it with professional-grade spirit gum to ensure it stayed in place. Over time, he perfected his disguises, adding wigs, makeup, and colored contact lenses to change his appearance. Jeff spent hours before each robbery perfecting his new identity. Understanding that his ability to remain unrecognizable was the key to his success. His growing confidence led to more sophisticated disguises as the crime spree continued, with Jeff creating entirely different personas by varying facial hair, makeup, posture, and even his gait. Surveillance footage from different robberies often showed what appeared to be different people, demonstrating Jeff's skill at transformation. Jill played a crucial role as the getaway driver, expertly navigating Chicago's suburban streets to evade police. Her quick thinking and driving skills allowed them to escape without detection. "We were like Bonnie and Clyde, but smarter," Jill would later remark. By February 1991, Jeff and Jill seemed to be living comfortably, even purchasing a 2-story townhouse in Hanover Park with a large cash down payment. Jeff opened a used bookstore in Roselle, which he claimed was a result of his business endeavors. The bookstore became a success, impressing customers with Jeff's knowledge of classical literature. However, beneath the surface, the couple was struggling. Jill's battle with depression led to alcohol abuse, and her mood swings became a source of tension. Eventually, Jill was diagnosed with schizophrenia and manic depression, now known as bipolar disorder. She began receiving treatment and therapy to manage her condition. Despite these personal struggles, the couple's financial situation worsened. Jill regularly maxed out their credit cards, and Jeff poured money into the bookstore, worsening their debt. Their need for money grew, leading them to continue robbing banks. By this time, Jeff's identity as the Bearded Bandit remained unknown, and his use of a police scanner ensured that he could execute his heists quickly and escape before law enforcement could respond. On November 4, 1991, their criminal activities escalated. Palatine police officer Kevin Maurer initiated a traffic stop on a Honda with an expired license plate. The driver, later identified as Jeff, slammed on the brakes, jumped out of the car, and fired 3 shots from a rifle into Maurer's squad car, striking him in the shoulder. Maurer reversed his cruiser and called for backup. Witnesses reported seeing a man with a fake beard and sunglasses calmly return to the car and drive away. A massive manhunt ensued, with helicopters circling and schools in the area going into lockdown. Police went door to door searching for the suspect, but the man had already abandoned the stolen Honda and was believed to have taken off in a second vehicle, which had been left for him to find as part of the escape plan. Because the description of the shooter matched that of the bank robber the police had been hunting, the FBI was called in to assist. A special task force, made up of federal agents and detectives from 7 local police departments, was created. They examined every bank robbery in the Chicago area over the past few years, looking for patterns. The Bearded Bandit, as he became known, seemed to favor Japanese-made vehicles, all of which were stolen. He would leave the banks in one vehicle, then change vehicles a few blocks away. He wore layers of clothes to disguise his weight, and he always wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. Detectives suspected the culprit might be a law enforcement officer due to the robber's comfort with a gun and his precise shooting stance, which was often taught in law enforcement training. The use of a police scanner and the bandit's ability to commit robberies across different jurisdictions also suggested insider knowledge. However, despite these clues, the bandit remained elusive. A few weeks after the shooting, in late November 1991, the Bearded Bandit struck again, this time robbing First Chicago Bank in Elk Grove Village. This time, he had an accomplice, described as 5'10" with a slight build, also wearing a fake beard and sunglasses. While the Bearded Bandit grabbed the cash, the accomplice covered the door. They escaped in a stolen vehicle, which was later found abandoned a few blocks away. Authorities were frustrated, but they were closing in on their suspects. They just needed a lucky break. On December 10, 1991, federal agents discovered a stolen Mazda parked at the edge of a mall parking lot in Schaumburg, Illinois, about 30 miles northwest of Chicago. The car's ignition wires were exposed, suggesting it was being prepared for a crime. Suspecting it would be used in an upcoming heist, the FBI task force set up a surveillance operation, waiting for the thieves to return. After 6 days of staking out the vehicle, their patience paid off. On December 16th, just before noon, a rusty gray van pulled into the lot. A man, later identified as Jeff Erickson, exited the van and approached the stolen Mazda. He began hot wiring the car's engine while his wife, Jill Erickson, parked the van on the far side of the lot. Agents immediately moved in and surrounded the Mazda, ordering Jeff to raise his hands. Startled, he twice reached for a loaded gun on the seat next to him before finally surrendering. During the arrest, officers discovered 2 loaded firearms, a fake beard, and 2 fake mustaches in his possession. Meanwhile, Jill Erickson refused to go quietly. Upon seeing the agents, she sped out of the parking lot in the van, leading authorities on a high-speed chase through Schaumburg. Reaching speeds of 110 miles per hour, she tore through streets before turning into a residential neighborhood. She soon found herself trapped at a dead end on Bear Flag Drive, the only route in and out of the small subdivision. Cornered, Jill fired her gun at the pursuing officers, initiating a shootout. Police returned fire, shooting out the van's tires. Despite being struck, Jill continued to drive recklessly through the neighborhood until she crashed into a low cement wall. As officers approached the van, they found her slumped in her seat, blood streaming from her head. Paramedics rushed Jill to Humana Hospital in Hoffman Estates, but her injuries were too severe. She was pronounced dead around 6 p.m. As Jill was being processed, Jeff, handcuffed in the back of a squad car, listened to the entire event unfold on the police radio. He was stunned to hear that shots had been fired, but he wouldn't find out Jill's fate until later that evening when he was taken to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago. There, he was informed that his wife was dead. A few days later, he was taken to see her body at the funeral home while still handcuffed and surrounded by federal agents. An autopsy revealed that the fatal shot had come from Jill's own gun. After Jill's death, authorities searched the Ericksons' townhome and discovered a cache of firearms, ammunition, knives, smoke grenades, gas masks, disguises, and a 6-foot safe in the garage. They also found a bulletproof vest that had been delivered that day but had not yet been opened. The most interesting find was the tape in the VCR, Bonnie and Clyde. On February 12, 1992, Jeffrey Erickson was indicted on federal charges of bank robbery and state charges for shooting a police officer. He pleaded not guilty to the charges, and his trial was scheduled to begin in July 1992. While in jail, Jeff told reporters that he had missed his wife more than he could have ever imagined. He said, "Jill and I were both loners. I guess we were inseparable. What's keeping me okay in here is that I don't have to worry about her now." On July 1992, Jeff's trial began. Although Officer Maher could not identify Jeff as the shooter, federal agents testified that shell casings found at the scene of the shooting matched a gun found in Erickson's home. Some bank tellers also had trouble identifying the Bearded Bandit. In one case, an employee from Savings of America Bank mistakenly pointed to a reporter from the Chicago Tribune instead of Jeff. Jeff was officially charged with 8 bank robberies, though authorities suspected him of at least 11, with Jeff himself estimating the total to be closer to 20. On July 20th, 1992, just a few days into Jeff Erickson's trial, Jeff's mother noticed her son acting strangely. She informed his lawyer that she thought Jeff might try to escape. The lawyer passed the information along to the U.S. Marshals, but they didn't act on it. On a Monday shortly before 5:30 p.m. in the underground garage of the Durskin Federal Building, Jeff Erickson, while being prepared for transport to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, managed to free himself from his handcuffs. He then wrestled a service revolver away from a deputy U.S. Marshal and immediately began his deadly rampage. Erickson shot one deputy marshal before attempting to flee the scene. As he ran, a building security guard pursued him, firing a shot that struck Erickson in the back. Despite his injury, Erickson fatally shot the security guard and continued his escape. making it halfway up a ramp before stopping to assess his dire situation. Meanwhile, retired detective Harry Bellamini was working as a security officer at the PO, heard the gunfire and rushed to the scene. Confronted by Erickson, who tried to pose as an FBI agent using his suit as a disguise, Bellamini's instincts as a seasoned cop saw right through the ploy. Bellamini fired 6 rounds at Erickson, hitting him in the back and bringing him to one knee. In his final moments, Erickson grimly declared, "I'm going to jail. I'm going to die anyway. I'm going to take everyone with me." He then turned his weapon on Bellamini, fatally shooting him. Finally, Erickson raised the gun to his own chin and ended his life with a single shot. Next to his body, investigators found a small handcuff key, which explained how he had managed to free himself earlier. This harrowing sequence of events left 3 people dead. Between 1991 and 1992, Jeff and Jill Erickson executed a series of meticulously planned heists across Chicago's northern suburbs, targeting banks in Wilmette, Skokie, and Niles, among many more. Each robbery followed a similar pattern. Jeffrey would enter the banks during off-peak hours, wearing a disguise, usually a fake beard and sunglasses, and carrying a police scanner to monitor law enforcement communications. In the end, Jeff and Jill Erickson met a tragic fate, quite reminiscent of the infamous Bonnie and Clyde. Their crimes and their doomed love story became the subject of movies, and their names would be remembered along other criminal heroes. However, their actions also led to the deaths of Deputy Marshal Bill Frakes and retired detective Harry Bellamini, both of whom died in the line of duty and will not be forgotten. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to Breakout Bank for more videos.